All right, what's next for the Big 12? Dude, it's good. I can tell you that much. 14 is going to be the number. And everybody's putting a lot of hype around Arizona right now. The magnifying glass is on Arizona as being the addition alongside Colorado. What's interesting here is, say that Arizona comes to the Big 12 along with Colorado. You put 14 teams, right? You got your new additions with BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, and then you bring in Arizona and Colorado. 14's great. You're matching other leagues, the SEC at 16, the Big 10 at 14. You're feeling good at 14. But what happens to Oregon and Washington? What happens to Arizona State, which many have said is pretty much a package deal with Arizona? What happens to Utah? While they would loathe being in the Big 12, they're going to be independent like BYU was for decades if they don't get on their horse and do something. You're in a position right now as the Big 12 where you can be picky. The problem with being picky, and it's really not even a problem, it's just kind of a conundrum for us to discuss, is what happens when you've hit 14, when you don't want to keep going right now. What happens to Washington? What happens to Oregon? The best news that I can give Pac-12 fans currently, your conference will likely stay together for at least a couple more years because the Big 12 is not ready to go to 16. I don't see it being a productive business model for the Big 12 to take 16, because now you're going, look, we have 8, long-standing member institutions, the hateful 8, and then you add in 8 new guys. Not a great way to build stability. Not a great way to have a foundation when half of your conference, half of your league is brand new. From a TV rights standpoint as well, you're looking at how do you restructure that? How does that look moving forward in the next decade in who you want to bring in, how big these markets are? Obviously, Seattle would be huge. Oregon has the Nike money, the Phil Knight money, so they'd be awesome too. But you're at a spot now where 14 still, so that's 6 teams that are not used to the Big 12, 6 teams that have to acclimate to a new conference. And if it's Arizona, everybody talks about how Arizona would be the fit in the Big 12 culturally, which, by the way, makes no sense to me. Arizona would fit just as much as Arizona State. Arizona would fit just as much as Utah. This whole oh, yes, it's the cultural way to go. What? Who's a bad fit culturally? Cal Berkeley, sure. But Arizona is no better than Arizona State or Utah. People keep shoving this down your throats. Oh, Arizona's the fit. I don't know, guys. If the Big 12 got Oregon, I'd be over the moon. But if the Big 12 got Oregon, Washington would want to go with them. I don't know why those two have become a package deal. Something about the Pacific Northwest. They think they have to go together. But those schools, those brands are bigger than Arizona. I would rather have those 2 schools than Arizona. I just don't know how the Big 12 does it and gets to 14. It seems like Brett Yormark is wanting to stick at the 14 level, and I think that's the way to go right here. So then what does that mean? Who's next? Basically what I'm getting at, who's the one lucky team that gets to come to the Big 12? Because at this point, a lot of this is hinging, it seems, on Arizona. And if they're not in, who is? And everybody else is out, right? There's one team who's going to be in this league with Colorado. And then what happens? I genuinely am curious. Does this give the Pac-12 this ability to stay together for a little bit? Could they go get San Diego State and Fresno State, maybe a Memphis, knowing that more schools will leave the conference for the Big 12? The Pac-12 is dangerously close to becoming a Mountain West level conference. What I think is the most likely scenario here is Oregon leaves, Washington leaves, Arizona leaves, Arizona State leaves. Those 4 teams, along with Colorado, are gone. Maybe throw Utah in that hat. As of now, no. Give me those 5: Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, Washington, Oregon. Those 5 are gone from the Pac-12 in the next 3 years, 2 years. Guarantee it. Now, what you're left with in that conference is a weird shell of Stanford and Cal, Washington State, Oregon State. What do they do? Best case scenario, they accept that they're going to become little brother, that they're going to become a Mountain West Conference level, and you can still retain the shell of a Power Five if you bring in Fresno State, San Diego State, Boise State, SMU, Memphis. So you take those five, replace the five that I gave you who are leaving, the big brands, and now you pretty much say, hey, look, we have the Mountain West Conference, which is fairly on point with the Pac-12, which is fairly on point with the AAC. Call it a day. There is a legitimate Power 4, Power 3, Power 4 with the Big 12, depending on what Florida State does. And then, a tier of three conferences, that are the Mountain West, the Pac-12, and the AAC. Sweet. That's good news for the Pac-12. You don't have to die. You get to still be a conference. You just have to understand that Washington and Oregon aren't going to hang around for this. They're not. You got to accept that. You got to add what you can add, and then hope that you can still be relevant somewhat in college athletics, though you probably can't. Pac-12's relevant days of being relevant, they're getting thin. They're getting real thin. And so what's next for the Big 12? I don't know about Arizona, but I know that I'm going to call my shot here. The Big 12 stops at 14. What's next? 14. Past that, I don't know. Give it some time. But for now, that's where we need to be. 14, sign the dotted line, rock and roll. On Locked On Baylor, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.